Welcome to the Genealogy Happy Hour, a place where new family historians can learn to document their family histories and celebrate their new discoveries. I'm Amy.
And I'm Penny, and we're here to help you discover your family tree from the beginning.
Welcome to episode 92. In this episode, we are going to be talking about how local histories can help you find your ancestors and see what their life was like at that time. But first, do we have a wine, Amy?
We do. We have a delicious Pinot Noir from Willamette Valley from the Cho Wines. It is a sour cherries, red currant, smoky, earthy, medium-bodied Pinot. It's just really nice. It's bright and juicy and just delightful. And it's a James Suckling rating of 91. So
wow, that sounds delicious.
It is. So
we have to try it.
The sponsor of today's episode of Genealogy Happy Hour is newspapers.com, the largest online newspaper archive. Newspapers.com is your ultimate resource for discovering your family's history. Explore more than 800 million newspaper pages in their vast collection spanning 3 centuries. Newspapers.com is your gateway to exploring the past, with papers from the U.S., UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond.
Trace your family's journey and uncover the extraordinary tales of your ancestors through newspaper stories, birth and marriage announcements, obituaries, photos, and much more. For listeners of today's show, newspapers.com is extending a discount of 20% off on a Publisher Extra subscription. Just use the code HAPPYHOUR at checkout. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity.
Well, Amy, this episode we're going to be talking about local histories. Just diving into the town your ancestor lived in and what was happening at the time and how these local histories can help us find our ancestors and see what's going on.
I love using the local histories. You can get a lot of good leads out of these. And maybe not necessarily your particular ancestor is mentioned in there, but their more famous sibling was, or their parents, or their in-law. And they're mentioned, because one of their fan club was mentioned in this, but you can still glean some information from them. So, and plus you get to find out a little bit more about what the community was like when your ancestor was living there. So, I love them.
So, do you have any really good stories to tell us about local histories?
Well, sure, of course. Obviously, what the first thing that you're looking for, most of us would go looking for those biographical profiles. And I guess we should start out by saying that a lot of these local history books they're very popular. They were published in the late 19th, early 20th centuries, particularly in the northern and Midwestern states. And they usually kind of coincided sometimes with the anniversary of the county or the location. But they would always, usually profile either the very prominent members of the community or a history of the community and the early people who settled it and founded it. But like I said, you can look for, not only just don't look for your ancestor's name profile, but their relatives. I was able to locate, it was interesting, it's called The Valley of the Upper Maumee River. It's published by Branton Fuller in 1889. And so just a little backtracking a little bit, in the 1850 census, my ancestor's family is enumerated saying that they were from France in that 1850 census. When I find the local history and I'm reading about the family, it says that they were actually from Switzerland. And it gives the date of birth of the entire family, the parents, then their children, and then I think 2 of the children, or at least 2 of the children, have a profile in there. And it was interesting because there was different information in the 2 brothers' profiles. And this was published during their lifetime. So that's the other thing that's really cool about these local histories, is that sometimes, the people who they're writing about are actually still living, or their children. So you have people who are giving, firsthand or very close to that information about the family. So the profile said that my ancestors were born in Switzerland, and in fact, I was then able to get a copy of the naturalization record from the, I think it was at the Indiana State Archives, and they were from Switzerland.
I wonder why they said France in the census.
Because they were French speaking.
So maybe.
Yeah. Because they were from Canton Bern.
Or maybe the census taker just, is like, yeah, you're French.
They were from French speaking in Canton Bern, French speaking, and so that's where the French came from. So, and then actually on one of my second great grandfather's death certificate, it does say Bern, Switzerland on it. So, which is really cool.
My ancestors from Bern as well. Maybe we're related.
So that's a way that you can, the census just says France, and then I was able to, with really fill in a lot with the local history, and then the documentation backed up that history, which is even better. So. And sometimes they even have like the little etchings with their head, like a headshot sometimes of the individual that, I don't have a photo of. But
did they have that of your ancestor?
Not on the Swiss, but I do have one on a grandmother who actually, I think, married like a doctor or somebody it was her second husband. I don't descend from him. I descend from her first husband, but because she was married to this prominent doctor, then her headshot, her little etching is in there. So I have an image of her. So those are kind of cool too.
No, I love that, because usually it's always other people. When I look through, I'm like, I don't think my family was wealthy enough to be listed in a lot of those books.
So beyond the biographical profiles, like we were talking about earlier, the history of the community, where you get to know who the founding members are of that community, what the natural resources were, who the native peoples were, how they interacted with the community. It's going to give you a lot of information about what it was like when the county or that town was founded, and who the leadership was, what kind of churches, what kind of schools there were, who usually, like, who are the pastors or the lay leadership, who are the early educators. There's always who is the schoolmaster, things like that. And then there's also like little county maps, so which can also be very helpful when we're trying to locate where our ancestor lived within that community.
Yeah, that is awesome when you have all that stuff in the local history books. And I know it's always helpful to, search Google Books and whatnot. And if you can find them and purchase them inexpensively, and I know a great place that I've gotten quite a few history from is Abe Books, ABE Books.
Right.
I've gotten a great, has some really good ones from Connecticut and New York that have helped me out a lot.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I found a lot on Google Books, and which are free. They're digitized and they're free, and sometimes you can even search within them as well, because sometimes they aren't indexed. They're not always indexed.
That's true.
The other thing that is really cool is, in these books, usually they will have abstracts of some vital records, early church records even. So, for example, Penny, when you and I did our Ohio road trip, we went to Medina County, and I had already looked in the History of Medina County, Ohio by William Henry Perrin. It was published in 1881, and it said that my ancestors were the first couple to be married in Medina County. They were married in 1816 in Medina. So we went to the courthouse, and I was like, I want a copy of this marriage record. It's the first one here. And they're like, we don't have it. How can that be? Well,
we expected it to be framed on the wall.
Exactly right. So I even when I went to my red book, And I said, Medina was formed in 1812 from Portage County. So it was already a county when they got married there. But then it also says in the Red Book that they did not start keeping records in Medina until 1818. So my ancestor's 1860 marriage, which was the first one in Medina County, was actually recorded in Portage. And I did find a copy of it in Portage.
Interesting.
But the really cool part it obviously it tells me it did tell me when they got married, and I was able to find the record. But it also goes on and tells this whole story because this was the first couple married in Medina County. It goes on and talks about how there wasn't a justice of the peace in the township, so someone in the community volunteered. They named the guy, and he went out and he went over to so-and-so's house to try and get the justice of peace, but he wasn't home. So then they had to go and they had to ride someplace else on horseback to go get the justice of peace. So there's this big huge story about how the community was trying to find a justice of the peace so that this couple could get married. So that's that really brings your ancestors to life.
Yeah, apparently it takes a village to get this people married in Medina.
So I would never have known that if I hadn't looked in the county history. So, but they will list all the early births, the deaths, the marriages, sometimes in these county histories. In fact, they also list some profiles of the war veterans too, because they're very proud of the war veterans who came from their community. In A History of Shenandoah County, Virginia by Whalen, the appendix says that it includes early births and baptisms, lists of marriages from 1782 to 1800, members of Virginia House of Delegates from Shenandoah County, members of the Virginia Senate from Shenandoah County, delegates of Dunmore County to the Revolutionary Convention, members of the Virginia State Conventions, members of Virginia House of Delegates, members of the Virginia House of Delegates from Warren County, members of the Virginia House and delegates from Warren and Clark, the roster of the 10th Legion, roster of Siebert's Irish Company, roster of Rice's Artillery Company, the Swiss Guards. And I was like, the Swiss Guards? But I know.
Yeah.
It gives us a little history about the Swiss Guards and Lucerne, Switzerland, and then it lists surnames that they associate, according to Whalen, they associate with serving as Swiss Guards. And the interesting thing is, one of my ancestors' surnames is listed there. So we're going to have to put this on our list because we're planning on going to Virginia next year to do research. So I might have to look into that one a little bit more.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So, because I don't know. I think they might be stretching there a little bit. But it's worth checking out. So, and it is actually one of the names that I do want to research while we're in Virginia. So I can just see if I have a Swiss Guard connection or not.
Yes. There's just so much you can find out in those local histories. What businesses were in those towns? What occupations could your ancestors have had? What was local? What was their main industry at that time? A lot of those will be listed as well. Yeah, it's definitely worth looking into and trying to find a book or pamphlet or something, that someone has written up at some point.
It really can fill in your genealogy and the life of bring to life your ancestors, and especially if you have ancestors who you've got multiple lines within the same community. This could be a wealth of information in these local histories that can really help you fill in some blanks. I think in one of them, it's the only document that I have. It's really not a document because I know it's a published publication, but that mentions the relationship between the daughter and her father. there is no document, there is no vital record. There's, she's not mentioned in his will or in his probate. Her husband is, but it doesn't say this is my son-in-law. It just, his name is mentioned in that. And so, but this is the only the record that I have that really links the two together.
Huh. Interesting.
So again, lots of very good clues that you can get that. And, we already mentioned Google Books as a good source, but WorldCat, I've used WorldCat to locate a local history near me. And sometimes they're not at the local library or your genealogical center. I actually found it at a university, a small college here locally. They had a copy of a history from Kentucky there. So probably somebody donated their collection of books at one time. But anyway, they had it, and it was right here. So, and the main library did not have it, which was great. So WorldCat is always a good source for locating books and publications. And then if I've actually have a copy, I own a copy of the history of Shenandoah County because so many of my ancestors lived there, and you can buy these on Amazon, eBay, or like you said, Abe Books has them as well.
Yeah, expand those libraries. I think that's an important thing, is to have those books in your collection, or at least your digital collection,
right.
If you can get it digitally too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Until next time. Cheers. Thank you for listening. Please email us with any questions or comments at genealogyhappyhour@gmail.com.
Visit our website, www.genealogyhappyhour.com, for additional resources, books, and wines. Don't forget to drink responsibly
and never drink around genealogical documents.